Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning. At least that's what Paul Marino would say. And Paul can't be with us today. I think he's on a beach in Aruba. I don't know, though. He's just not here. In his absence, I'm going to do my best to give you a little show, and we'll see. It'll be informative. I'm going to talk about the Plunketts. This is the second generation of the Plunkett family, and the Plunketts were very influential in the history of Adams. They transformed Adams. They're the ones who brought the wealth to town with the Berkshire Mills. All of Park Street is probably, all the large brick blocks on Park Street are all due to the Plunkett's prosperity. Several of the churches were built in that era. Several of the schools were built in that era of the 1890s when the Plunketts brought wealth to Adams. The family's completely gone now. All that's left is the mausoleum and their burial grounds. Every now and then a Plunkett comes back to Adams to be buried, but now there's rumors running out in the mausoleum, so we may not see them too often anymore. Let's get to the show. We do have a call-in line, 664-4408, if you have any questions or tell me to shut up or whatever, but let's begin. Let's go to my first slide. Here's W.B. Plunkett, William Brown Plunkett. His mother was a Brown. And he was out, the Brown family was influential in Cheshire and Adams as well, and he knew the Browns out in somewhere in Western New York, and I believe he actually went to school out there with the Browns out there. He was born in 1850. His father was probably in his 50s when he was born. He was born to a second wife. His mother was a niece to his father's first wife, she had several children. Only him and his brother survived. And here's W.B., who's maybe know him from the W.B. Plunkett Memorial Hospital, which you'll see here later. And this is his brother, Charles T., who I thought looked a little bit like Clark Gable from Gone with the Wind. Anyhow, Charles was born 5 years after, in 1855, which is actually 100 years before I was born. CT was Charles Timothy, and I'm not sure where the Timothy came from, but these are the two boys who changed Adams dramatically. They got their start in North Adams. I'm not sure who built the Greylock Mills. People know of the Greylock Mills on State Road. It's now called Greylock Works. And this guy, W.B., ran it. He was 5 years older, and this is, I think, one of his first mills that he actually had control over. You see it's pretty well built out here. It's probably just as it is today. It looks like it's got all the pieces. Whoa. Got carried away there. You got to see previews of the next show. That's not what I want you to see. This is what I want you to see. This is probably what the Greylock Mill looked like originally, before all the add-ons and the buildings and everywhere that were put. You can see State Road, look at they just freshly planted trees. And of course, it was a textile mill. And it'll be interesting to know that at the end of this street, at the corner, is the street called Protection Avenue. And why Protection? The Plunkett brothers belonged to an organization called the Home Market Protection League, I think it was called. And they basically wanted to guard local industry, American industry, and to fend off any foreigners like Great Britain, I think was our major competitor in those days, not China or Japan. And Great Britain could produce cotton cheaper and sell it, and bring it across the states to sell it, and underprice here in that was cotton that was made here in northern Berkshire. We're back to this picture again to show how it was built out. You can sort of see the original mill in the center here. And then you can see all the pieces that were added onto it afterwards. This place is still there. That little hut, it must be a punch house where people came in to punch the time card to come in. I'm sure there's still people out there who worked there or whose ancestors worked there. I know my grandfather and my uncle worked there for a period of time. And I'm not sure when, probably in the 30s. Here's another Plunkett mill that they had control over, and it is in Williamstown. It's recently been torn down. It was on Cole Avenue, and it's now a housing project is there. But this was another Plunkett mill, another textile mill. I'm not sure if they were exactly a full textile mill, if they were just made the warp or if they just spun, but this was another Plunkett mill in northern Berkshire. They've reached into Williamstown. They also had one in Pownell, which I don't have a picture of, but people may remember that Pownell mill as the Cornish wire going out on, 256, that road out through Pownell. And here's President William McKinley. He was a state rep from Ohio, a congressman, I shouldn't say state, a U.S. rep from Ohio, and he's the one who proposed, or he became friends with these people who wanted to protect the home market, and they got him to write the McKinley Tariff, which would basically put a tax on a tariff, and we've heard about tariffs from Mr. 47th President. Tariffs were used as a way to boost local businesses, local industry, but to the detriment of people like the farmers who then could not sell their goods because the tariffs would work against them. Countries would put tariffs up against American farmers, so they couldn't sell their goods over in Europe or England. And Bill McKinley sort of, I think, angered enough farmers in Ohio so that after he passed the McKinley Tariff, they went and redistricted him out of a job. But he came back at them and became a governor. He was redistricted out, I believe, in like 1880 something or other. And he got elected to the governorship in 1892, I believe, or somewhere. Those dates might be wrong, but you can get the idea here of him losing his job because he angered enough farmers who voted out in Ohio. Here's a picture of Hoosick Street. You see the Berkshire Mill number 1 on the left-hand side. You may recognize it. It's still there. It was the first mill of the Berkshire Cotton Manufacturing Company. When the McKinley Tariff was passed, the Plunketts knew that they would be price protected. They would have no foreign competition, or they would have one up on the foreign competition. So the tariff was going to go into effect in 1890, and they got together investors and put this mill up in 1889. And by they started turning out the first bit of cotton in August or September of 1890, and the McKinley Tariff went into effect in like September of 1890. So they had positioned themselves perfectly to start making cotton so that they would be making money quickly. This is just the first mill in 1889, and the Plunketts were very big on carving their dates in stone. I don't have a picture of it, but you'll see this little place, right, the little white stone over the doorway says 1889. And if you're ever in Adams in the visitor center or that parking lot, or go down Hoosick Street, you'll see that 1889, the memorable year when this building was put into place. By 1892, I think it was, they had already expanded and built mill number 2 behind it. And I don't have a picture of it specifically. It was a pretty nondescript mill, but it was double the size of mill number 1. And Bill McKinley, who was governor of Ohio, came here to dedicate it. And Bill McKinley was, honored here in Adams and loved very much because his tariff was making a lot of people rich. So within 4 years, actually 2.5 years, they had doubled the size of their production. Then across the street is mill number 3. I should probably point out over here. Let's see if we can get that. Yeah. On the far right, just to give you some perspective, is Cheese Restaurant, the Chinese restaurant in Adams at the corner of Hoosick and Columbia Street. And behind it is that behemoth mill, mill number 3, which went into operation on the day that McKinley was nominated to be the Republican candidate for the President of the United States in 1896. There was a slight recession in 1895. People blamed that on the tariff, but it was probably other circumstances as well. And the Plunketts, I think, took advantage of that time when the economy was maybe a little bit slow to build this mill number 3, which was, once again, twice the size of mill number 2. So their expansion was always an exponential, doubling what was the previous mill. How many people remember? I should bring this back. The walkway between mill number 3 and mill number 1, and somebody on Facebook asked me what happened to that little dummy that was in the middle of the road there. You see it, called them dummies, but I don't know what the official name is. I remember as a child, and I'm not sure when it was actually demolished and removed. Bill Plunkett came to Adams on 2 occasions, 3 if you count once as governor. Here he is as a president. He came actually like 6 months after he was inaugurated. He was inaugurated in March of 1897. He came here in September of that year and virtually brought his White House. So Adams was the White House. Park Street was the White House of the United States of America at the time. The only people in this picture, besides Bill McKinley and his wife next to him, is in the background is W.B. Plunkett himself. That may be his brother behind him, and her head photo bombing between Mr. and Mrs. McKinley is Bill Plunkett's wife, Lydia, or Lida. I think it was called Lida, was her name. And some of these people I do not know. The man with the beard might be the Secretary of State and his wife. And I believe the woman up in the right-hand corner is his niece. If he's not the Secretary of State, he's the mayor of Fitchburg. And down at the corner is W.B. Plunkett's second son, or first son. He had 2 sons. One he called, it must be the second, because the first son he called W.C., William Caldwell. And then this one is Theo, I don't know what his middle name was. But Theo was the second son who really didn't get into the business, but he influenced Adams in other ways. And I'll talk about him in the future show. Theo did some important things here in this town. And here he is sort of photobombing as well. Here they are on the front porch of the Plunkett mansion called Montreat that used to be on Park Street, about where the Berkshire, the Great Rock Federal Credit Union building is. It was set back from the street quite a bit. There was a big front lawn, and so it'd be somewhere in the parking lot in the back. The building was built by his father after the Civil War with his profits from the Civil War. The building was torn down in 1938, I believe it was. And I thought that it was somebody who bought it at auction and tore it down because they didn't want to have to pay the taxes on it. But in fact, the Plunkett family tore it down because they wanted to make that lot available because the federal government was looking for a new site to build the post office in Adams. And they thought the site would be more attractive to the federal government if it was vacant. And they tore down the house. But the federal government went and changed its mind and went and built it where the post office is today at the corner of Center Street on the other side of the river from this location. So we lost this incredible mansion because of someone's hope that they would have a post office in its place. You see WB sitting down. He was a tall man. We've seen his passport application. They said he was 6 feet 5 inches. And then behind him is his brother Charles, CT, and next to him, I guess, is Lida. Back in the background, you got me there. I'm sure that guy is maybe the guy in the middle is the mayor of Fitchburg, and that may be his niece. And I don't know who the guy in the right is. Someday I'll find out and know for sure. And Bill McKinley's got a great hat. Since McKinley's government policy brought so much wealth to the town of Adams, when he was assassinated in 1901, the town, of course, was very upset, and it was a great loss for our community. So they erected a statue to him in 1903, and here's the thousands of people who came to see it unveiled at McKinley Square. I don't know if there's ever been this many people in McKinley Square ever since then. But you see, everything here is in place. You see back there is the Notre Dame Church and the Notre Dame Rectory back there. And then on the other side to the left is the Desrochers house, the Dr. Alfred Desrochers and his son Bernard and his daughter Roma, and I can't think of the other daughter's name. Maybe it was Bernadette Desrochers, Roma and Bernadette, who were influential people in Adams and well known. And here's a statue, better view of him. It's interesting that he's standing in front of a streaming smokestack. They all built burnt coal in those furnaces, and the pollution here must have been sort of interesting. I remember when Arnold Printworks still burnt coal, and one of my jobs was to go wipe the clotheslines off before my mother could hang her laundry out, because to get the dust off, the coal dust off the clothesline wires. You'll see this is a pretty good picture. You can see down the street where mill number 2 is after mill number 1, and then on the right you see St. Joseph's Chapel, which was built by the French Canadians in 1878. And it's the first building in Adams to be built exclusively for Roman Catholic worship. The Irish Catholics had bought an old, former congregational church on Park Street, and they moved it down to where people may know as Simmons Furniture. It's now Real Eyes Gallery, and then now it's vacant. I heard that Nocha Realty bought it. They're going to turn it into office spaces and apartments, I guess. But this building was demolished in 1918, I believe it was, so that Mr. Grove, and I can't remember his name, maybe Charlie, he built one of the earlier gas station automobile repair shops and it was a filling station. It was a battery store. It was, I think they sold tires. They probably repaired cars as well. I know Charlie Towers sold cars out of it, so it was a car dealership as well. And now it's our Adams Fire Station. And in the background, you can see looming ever so tall is the Berkshire Mill number 3. Oh, down in the corner it has here copyright Parsons. Parsons was a major photographer in Adams. He took lots of carte de visites, those pictures, those little photographs of people you could leave at people's houses, say, oh, I came to visit, here's our picture. We have quite a bit of his photos in the Historical Society collection, but my predecessor, Oscar Chaquette, knew his daughter, who was living in Ludlow or somewhere in that area, and contacted her and said, where are your father's pictures? We'd like, to have them in our Historical Society. And she says we had just thrown them all away, that they didn't want them anymore, and they were cluttering it up, and that they basically got rid of his whole collection of photographs. And to our loss, I'm not sure what was in that collection, but unfortunately, it's gone. This is mill number 3, that behemoth, and its famous clock tower. That clock tower used to ring across the town, and the people knew what time it was because of it. I'm not sure how loud it was, but it stood here until 1972 or 72 or 73. The town of Adams was upset. Mill number 3, the mill had closed in 1958 and was vacant since then. Al Ostrowski was storing junk cars in it. It was just a general warehouse. I think he rented out space to people to store boats and anything they wanted to store there, basically a warehouse. But bricks were falling down onto Depot Street, and the town of Adams told him he has to tear it down, and he was forced to do it, and he took him a little while. I think a couple of years. Him and Casimir Murek helped him, but it was just a 2-man, 3-man operation who actually took it down. He took the whole mill down and left the tower there, and he offered it to the town. They said, you should have, this is a great little, it could be a tourist attraction. And the town of Adams, without much foresight, said, no, we don't want it. And I should have brought the pictures of someone who took it when they tore it down in different stages. In the front part is the main offices of the Berkshire Cotton Manufacturing Company. And this is where the superintendent's office would be, where I'm sure the board meetings might have been held, where W.B. Plunkett would show up for work every day, having CT. It was also where the payroll was put out. I'm told that payroll was all done in cash, and it would come by, I believe they said by train or by mail, I can't remember which. A load of cash, and that the police would guard it on the way to bring it to this place here, so, in case there were any gangsters who would steal the company's payroll. And then I don't know how many women it took to fill all the little pay envelopes, and then they would be distributed out throughout the mill on, I think they got paid on Thursdays. But this yellow building is still standing. I know it was vacant for a while, and it was Fred Hobart, who took the vacant building and turned it into professional office space. I think there's still some office spaces in there, and people occupy it. I know Dr. Nemser, the dentist, was there for a while. There was an insurance agent in there. I think there was even a small pharmacy in there for a while. I'm not sure what's in there now. I should go look someday, hey? To the far left, you can see the spire of St. Thomas Aquinas Church. And then on the right, you can see there's 2 sets of railroad tracks. couple sidings, several sidings, so they can unload the bales of cotton and to also reload the finished cotton sheeting back up. Now there was only one rail track here when they tore them up in 1989, and now this is basically the Ashawiltacook rail trail that cuts through here. Just to give you an idea of how much it took up. Whoops, not going to let me do that, is it? How big the mill is and how much it took up in the valley. You'll see how it dominates. You'll look up at Mount Greylock and there's 3 tiers running down at 3 things. Those are the landslides from the 1901 landslide. Mount Greylock was pretty much forested. There was a big demand for burning charcoal and just, I don't know if they used the lumber for construction. I think they used it more to maybe fuel the kilns at the lime company. And probably used it for home heating. But anyhow, the mountain had been pretty much denuded in 1901. Let's see, that would be, 3 years earlier, 1898 is when Mount Greylock was bought and the Mount Greylock State Reservation was created, the first state reservation land in the Commonwealth. And Mount Greylock was protected from being any more foresting and clear cutting. Unfortunately, in 1901, with all the trees gone, there was a major cloudburst, they called it. It was a major storm, and it caused these landslides. It basically flooded the town of Adams, did all kinds of damage to all the streets. None of the neighboring towns suffered as much as Adams did. North Adams and Pittsfield didn't get the rainfall we got, but they also didn't have the mountain to have the water come streaming down without being stopped by any trees into the valley. But that's the story of those 3 landslides. Down in the very foreground, I don't know if you can see, you can't see it. Yes, you can. Foreground, you can see that row of buildings. That's all Summer Street businesses. By 1901, 1902, I think Summer Street was now a real commercial district. Got to be careful where you touch on these screens. In the foreground, you see that orange building with the big roof, right at the bottom of the picture. That was called Casangarda. It was on Clifford Lane. It must have had, I don't know, 8 or 12 apartments in it. And they called it Casangarda because there was a mispronunciation of Castle Garden. And Castle Garden used to be, before Ellis Island, Castle Garden was the entrance point for most immigrants. And this place was usually the entrance, early, your first apartment in Adams. And from here, after you made a little bit of money, you went and got yourself a real apartment. I can't remember if this burnt or if the town forced Mr. Krenzel to tear it down. I don't remember which, but it's gone now. Anyhow, it's history. But it was always sort of an eyesore, but also a huge place for people to live in Adams, especially the young, early Polish immigrants. I'm not sure if there's anything else I can point out in this. On the far right, you can see the sandbanks of Valley Street. There's 2 of them there. You can see the valley that they formed. The one on the right is where Memorial School is. They basically cut down that mountain, took its sand and used the sand in places. And the one on the left was later on taken down where they built the Castle Rathconner, and that's now also where the location of the Columbia Valley Housing is off there on Valley Street. Adams had a few sand piles, sand banks. You know that there's one on where McAndrews, or now Haddad, GMC is. That was a big sand bank that was important and used as fill and stuff during the flood control project in the 50s. And then there's another place off of Bellevue Avenue, which they called the Biscuits, because they said it looked like a biscuit, but I think they pretty much chopped it down so that it's no longer looks like a biscuit. It's just now just a sandbank. Well, this is the aerial view, good aerial view of the Berkshire Mills. You see mill number 1, the Berkshire Square Apartments, mill number 2, which was demolished in 1961 or 61. And it was demolished to make room for the first national store. Actually, it was demolished by Don LaFrance and the LaFrance family, who were going to expand and put their supermarket there. As soon as they completed it, though, First National made them an offer they couldn't refuse, and they sold it to First Nationals. After First National left, it became an Adams supermarket. Remember, the Superama was there for a little while. And then after that, it was, of course, Rite Aid, and now it's a Walgreen. But that's the history of that little site. And then there's mill number 3. I told you about that, the Gargantuan Mill that was in Benton Adams with the tower. That was demolished in 1972. And it's now basically a parking lot, and it's where our visitor center is. If you look at that parking lot today, you'll just see how big it is and how big that mill was. In the background is mill number 4. Now, according to newspaper articles, mill number 4 in its weave shed was the largest mill of its time built, of its kind built. It was built in 1899, and I'm assuming that, I don't know, the mills out in Lowell and Methuen and Lawrence must have been just as big, but maybe they were of a different nature. You see the weave shed, it has that sawtooth roof, and that's a pretty common thing in a weave shed because it gives, you see all the windows at one end are pointing towards the north, and the northern light is always the best light. It's not interfered by the lowering and setting of the sun or the heat of the south. There's also a weave shed, you say, the Greylock Mills in North Adams, and there was even a weave shed with that sawtooth roof on Union Street, which is now collapsed recently, and it's just a shell. But that type of roof it was a popular thing. Mill number 4 in the back is still in existence. It's empty, but it's still there, and every now and then there's talk that it's going to be turned into something, whatever, who knows. In the foreground, you can see the armory there in the middle at the bottom. And then after that is the McKinley Square building. Remember, it used to have a barber shop at one end, or Sokolof's, if you can remember that far back. And then was a Leon's Jewelry, and then after that was McKinley Square Pharmacy. Excuse me, I got a phone call, but I'm not going to take it. I'll silence my phone. And then, of course, the two churches. After McKinley Square, you just put Porch Talks up, but above the Porch Talks is the Groves' car dealership. You see how that replaced that St. Joseph's Chapel with that huge building, which is now our fire department and the water department as well. Both those town functions are in that one building. It's always great looking inside a factory, especially one of this magnitude. This is a spooler or a spinner. I don't know the difference between which one's spooling and which one's spinning. I'm pretty sure that's Mrs. Rinkowski down in the front center. Ed Rinkowski, I think, identified it as his mother. The man in the back there, you'll see, he would be the overseer. And these women here would be the ones who'd be running up and down the aisles, filling all the bobbins as they or spool and thread, which would later on be sent over to the a weave shed where they would then be woven. You see all the circles up around the ceiling. This whole mill, it was run by these belts and this pulley system. There'd be a main dynamo, a big a steam engine that would be in one of the two. I think there were two of them in the complex, who would produce the power, and then all the power would be transferred to these belts and pulleys that would then be operating all these machines. And then, of course, you also see to the far right those little contraptions that look like flying saucers beneath some. Those would be humidifiers. There was always a problem of so much cotton dust in the air, and the humidifier is, and also the moisture level helped keep the threads from being brittle, and they would be moistened, and so there was always be a moist climate in the mill. This is a pretty spectacular shot. These people are probably making a warp, if that's so this would be the warp, and then they would put a weft with it when they weave. So these women are then taking all these spools and putting them into this one beam. I believe they're called beams, and this woman is just guiding all these little pieces of thread to become future fabric. I like the look on the face of the overseer. But if you can imagine the noise in this place and the smell of fabric and textiles passing through, moving at a high speed. I keep pushing this button too hard. And here's inside a weave shed. These are all looms. As far as the eye can see, and you can see the light coming down from the ceiling. As I told you, that northern light was really good, and once again, you see the humidifiers there, spraying water to moisten the area to keep the stuff rolling without too much, nobody breaking down. And I thought I would add can't do that. I thought I'd add this is the letterhead of the Berkshire Cotton Manufacturing Company. You see the telling you how much spindles they have in looms, 6,000. I don't know how many people are working there. I know there was always, they're pushing the workers to operate more looms at once, a whole row of them, 20 of them at a time, to keep an eye on them going all the way across. You can't see it, but up there it says Plunkett President, and it's C.T. Plunkett is the president, so W.B. must be dead already. W.B. died in 1917, unexpectedly, and C.T. lived until 1927. He was able to help keep the company going for that, that period of time. I don't know any of these other guys, Cheryl or Haley or Thompson. They're all part of the board of directors, who probably own factories somewhere else elsewhere. The Plunketts, of course, had money, and they were very generous to the town of Adams. The old man, W.C., he basically, when he came back after the Civil War and had all that money, he basically built the Congregational Church to the right there on the hill. It lost its steeple in a windstorm in 1902 or something like that, and they never replaced it. And then his sons went and WB and CT built the parish house and the parsonage, which is to the left there, in 1896 or 7 or 8, somewhere around there. The late 1890s was a major change for Park Street. So many buildings were built. All the brick buildings were built between 1895 and 1900. So within a period of 5 years, all those buildings went up, if you can imagine that amount of construction. But these buildings are part of the Plunkett legacy in Adams. That's weird. Okay, this must be when the hospital was under construction. I thought I had it when it was completed. Why the windows go black? Anyhow, W.B. Plunkett decided he was going to build a hospital, and he was going to name that after his wife. His wife and C.T. Plunkett's wife died within 3 months of each other. One died in October, and the other one died in January. One died from, they called it la grippe, which was must be influenza, or maybe it was pneumonia. And then the other one died of, I think, a heart disease. And I think that's why we have the Plunkett Mausoleum. I think they built their wives one last house up by there in Maple Street Cemetery, and they were the first of the Plunketts to occupy that house. This place was built in 1919. It was built 1917 to 1918. W. Plunkett took a train ride, took a visit to the cotton plantations in Mississippi, the famous Yazoo City Delta. And on his way back, he had a heart attack and died in Pittsburgh, outside of Pittsburgh, and while this hospital was being built. So he never got, the care of this hospital. He died elsewhere. And then Plunkett's are famous for having double tragedies. He died in September, and his son, the heir apparent, the guy who I don't have a picture of, I should have a picture of him in the next show, William Caldwell, another William Caldwell, and he was supposed to be the heir apparent, but he had a ruptured appendix. And Oscar told me that he died on his kitchen table. The doctors were going to try and perform a surgery on him on the table, and they could not stem whatever sepsis that had caused, and he died shortly after his father did. So here were the two Plunkett boys who built a hospital, but no hospital could save their lives. Also in 1918, when this place actually officially opened, was the beginning, if you remember, the Great Pandemic, the Spanish influenza pandemic that killed millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, as some say, across the world. So the mortality rate was quite high for this building in its first year. I don't know how many deaths they had in that 1 year, all because of the pandemic. Irony, for sure. And not only that, they built the hospital and structured it so that there was a self-perpetuating board of directors, and they asked the town of Adams to pay for kicking money to support the hospital. They did not have an actual endowment fund that operated the hospital. Well, that caused all kinds of problems at town meeting. There were people who wanted more influence in how the hospital was run, and it was just chaos for many years. There was always bitter fights, to the point where by the 1970s, no doctor wanted to be associated with it. And plus, it had a history of just not being up to date. C.T., his brother, went and tore down Ella Brown's mansion and gave the land to the town, told them to build a school. They built this junior high, and they didn't, on the right side out of the school rooms, And on the left side is the auditorium and the gymnasium. And the town came to him and said, we don't have enough money to build the auditorium and the gymnasium. And so C.T. Plunkett pulled out his checkbook and wrote a check he said, this town's got to have, we've got to have a school with an auditorium and a gymnasium, and he basically paid for it. And they honored him by naming it C.T. Plunkett. But unfortunately, has just been changed to now being called Hoosick Valley Elementary. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Hoosick Valley Elementary School. I believe that's to placate Cheshire after they went and the school district closed down the Cheshire Elementary School and left Cheshire without a school. So they wanted to make it all Hoosick Valley. So now we have Hoosick Valley High School, Hoosick Valley Elementary School, not to be confused with each other though. And Plunkett being pushed into obscurity. Here it is, probably more we look like without not looking like a postcard. It's a beautiful building. All done in that, what do they call this? Windsor Tudor style revival of a Gothic revival it was big in the 1920s. Not only did C.T. Plunkett build this good junior high, he also left money to build on the right-hand side the maternity wing. Something like 9,700 people from Adams were born in that building on the right-hand side. I was born there, and C.T. Plunkett was the man who kicked in the money to buy it. Then he had extra money that he left even after he died in a will, to build this on the left-hand side, the nurses' home, nurses' dormitory. And during the 30s, during the Depression, the trustees decided to build it to be a work project and put people to work. And so they built that building. So this was quite the complex and a beautiful-looking thing, too. And now it is a housing complex. It was vacant for so long. There was plans on putting a police station there, putting the fire department there. Both places, the consultants told them it's not a good idea. There was even a movie company that wanted a place to burn down. They were offered that to be burnt down. Luckily enough, they sold it to Dave Carver, and Dave Carver and his rehabbing skills turned it into a housing complex, and it's now on the tax rolls, and it's helping pay Adams' taxes. So it's a building that since its conception was a burden on the town of Adams is now actually making the town some money. I thought this postcard was cool. There's what's going on in the sky there, but and those Lombardy poplar trees that are out in front are pretty dramatic too. I'm sure they were a nuisance, but they look cool here. And C.T. Plunkett also left a huge chunk of money to the Adams Library. There's still the C.T. Plunkett Book Fund. I think it's the largest of the trust funds that is in Adams. He also left money. It's the Congregational Church. They have a little bit of an endowment from him as well. Hey, and this is the end of my show. This is the end of what I can talk about this generation of the Plunketts. The next time will be shorter, and I'll talk about Theo and Theo's cousin, C.T. Plunkett Jr., both of them who came back to Adams and sort of did things here. Thank you, and welcome. Next 2 weeks from now, we'll have Paul back, I hope, so I'm not here alone. And thank you for watching. Good night.